when that little money came, we were still looking at each other like, man, what are we going to do with this?
Tonight, stimulus stalled. Negotiations continue on Capitol Hill as Texas businesses wait for more relief.
And I believe our voters should demand someone with real business experience to help lead us out of a global pandemic.
North Texas face-off. We're going one-on-one with Genevieve Collins, who's trying to return her Dallas district to Republicans. And vaccinating Texans, why health officials say most of us may have to wait till next summer for a COVID vaccine. Capitol Tonight starts right now. Thanks for joining us here on Capitol Tonight. I'm Karina Kling. Texas is facing a new surge in coronavirus cases, and officials are warning everyone to remain vigilant. This week, the state surpassed 17,000 deaths from the virus. And today, there were nearly 5,000 new cases reported, and around 4,000 are hospitalized. The numbers have been growing this month after a September plateau. It is especially bad in El Paso, where the hospital region there only has 17 ICU beds available. In North Texas, the region is caring for more COVID-19 patients than any other part of the state. And current Travis County hospitalization projections show numbers at the end of November that are close to highs seen back in July.
And now's the time for us to be vigilant again, because we can change this forecast. Right now, Halloween doesn't look too bad, but Thanksgiving's going to be ugly.
Health officials are also worried the upcoming flu season could limit the capacity of hospitals to take in more COVID-19 patients. Meanwhile, Texans continue to look for more relief from the economic toll of the pandemic, and it's shaping up to be a make-or-break week for another coronavirus stimulus package. The Republican-led Senate has 2 scheduled votes this week on bills that could bring some financial aid to millions. But over in the House, Speaker Nancy Pelosi is now imposing a deadline tonight on a deal with the Treasury Secretary. Still, even if a deal is passed, some small businesses aren't convinced they'd get the help they need. Arleanne Wallace joins us from Washington with more.
Lawmakers on Capitol Hill continue to go back and forth on a stimulus relief package. And while many businesses in Texas have been able to open back up, some are still struggling, and they're hopeful that lawmakers will pass legislation that'll offer some relief.
Fowler Smoke and Soul Food may I help you.
They're open for business, but things just aren't the same for the owners of Fowler Smoke and Soul Food.
I would say right now we're running about a third of what we were prior to COVID.
They applied for the first round of loans through the Paycheck Protection Program, but like a lot of mom and pop shops, were told the money ran out. They applied for the second round, and once the check came,
It was enough to open the doors back and to keep us from being put out or the lights turned off. It was literally pennies. Thankful for it, don't get me wrong. I'm not ungrateful, but it was really pennies.
they say it's hard for small businesses to compete with bigger corporations.
It was the ugliest thing that ever could have happened to us because we were already wondering, man, what are we going to do?
And while they aren't exactly holding their breath for some additional money from the federal government, they do say they hope real relief will come, but they'd also like to see lawmakers take a different approach.
If there is a stimulus package of any sort, make it something that will actually help the people that need help. If you have to, start at the bottom and work up.
They put their life savings into opening this restaurant about 2 years ago, and like so many Texans struggling right now, don't want to see their hard work go to waste.
It's one thing if your business fails on your own accord, but for something as big as this to happen and your business is automatically going down the drain, you're just watching it, and then for the people that say they're going to help you, for them to throw change at you, thinking that that's going to be enough to get you back to where you were, is very insulting.
Leanne, thank you. Yesterday, we told you about a competitive congressional race in Dallas where the attack ads are flying. We spoke with Democrat Colin Allred, who's trying to hang on to his District 32 seat against Republican challenger Genevieve Collins. Allred beat Republican incumbent Pete Sessions to flip the district from red to blue in 2018. Collins is a businesswoman who's making her first run for public office. District 32 includes northern and eastern Dallas County, and Republicans are trying hard to win back the once solidly red seat. Earlier today, Collins joined me to discuss her quest to upset the incumbent. Ms. Collins, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. I know you're new to politics. First off, what makes you qualified to serve the people of District 32?
Well, Karina, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be with you today. As a local businesswoman, I helped build my own family business from 36 employees to now over 300 employees, where we teach kids how to read and do math to close the achievement gap. And North Texas is an economic engine, not just of our state, but of our nation. And I believe our voters should demand someone with real business experience to help lead us out of a global pandemic. Someone that has created jobs, has balanced a budget, has forecasted growth, has real experience, not just in the business world, but also working with every school district that makes up this congressional district. I have the nuance of the neighborhoods and a true understanding and authenticity of working with our community. And I think that's what our voters want.
For any voters still trying to make up their minds, I don't know how many people there are that are still trying to make up their minds, but those that are, what is the number one issue you think is facing the district right now? What would you push first if elected?
Well, the economy is the number one issue. As Texans, we all want to get back to work. We want to be productive, and we want to get to work quickly and safely. That's what I'm seeing in District 32. There are a number of other top-line issues, but people want to be productive, want to have their jobs back, and want to be able to provide for their families and not have the federal government tell them what to do.
I want to put up a campaign mailer from you. Your opponent has accused your team of darkening his skin in this ad. First off, is that true? Was there any manipulation to this ad that you guys put out?
Well, Karina, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this. Absolutely not. I'm so disappointed and genuinely disgusted that my opponent would make such a false and awful accusation against myself and my campaign, and something that is categorically untrue. It's disappointing also that my opponent did vote to defund the police and does support raising taxes on small businesses, whereas I have the full endorsement and support of our police and vow to not raise taxes on our small businesses, especially coming out of a global pandemic.
Well, I want to ask you about that claim that he's defunding the police, because the ad itself notes that he restricted funding of the police when, in fact, Representative Allred voted on a congressional package that would have given police departments $600 million. So where's the defunding there?
Well, the reality is 2 weeks ago, the House voted on changing the package from the HEROES Act, which took out $600 million of funding. Of a $3 trillion package, Karina, they elected to take out $600 million of funding for our local law enforcement, which is why our law enforcement here in North Texas supports me, because they know that their current congressman doesn't have their back and doesn't stand up for them. So the reality is he voted to defund the police by $600 million.
But isn't there money still going into police departments? I mean, the funding was cut less than that $600 million that the House originally wanted.
Well, the House cut all of that funding. So it begs the question, does my opponent not think that law enforcement are heroes anymore? I think that they are, and anyone that puts their life on the front lines deserves to be supported and funded totally and not have that cut from any line item, period, end of story.
Supporting the $600 million originally. I want to move on. Healthcare has been a big issue during your campaign. Want to get a couple of quick responses from you. Have you ever supported President Trump's efforts to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act?
I haven't. And Karina, I think the reality is Republicans have kicked the can down the line on repeal and replacing the Affordable Care Act. They have nothing to replace the Affordable Care Act with, which is why I don't support repealing and replacing it. I think we have to have real reform on the Affordable Care Act, but I've never said that we need to repeal and replace it. And you can double check that on my website, which the congressman often misquotes.
There's been some talk about pre-existing conditions and protecting pre-existing conditions. Where do you stand on that? Would you ever vote on legislation that would do away with protecting pre-existing conditions?
Yeah, thanks for the question, because I'm so thrilled to be able to clear up the false misconceptions my opponent continues to throw at me. I would never vote or sign on to any piece of legislation that would strip any American with a pre-existing condition away. I will fight to ensure that all folks with pre-existing conditions always are cared for, have quality, affordable health care, and never have their conditions revoked or their insurance revoked.
Genevieve Collins, as I mentioned to your opponent yesterday, a race we are watching closely. Thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate you, Karina. Thank you for the opportunity.
And if you've missed any of our candidate conversations, including Collins' opponent, you can catch all of them on our website. Just head to spectrumlocalnews.com. Turning to another of Texas's competitive congressional races, it's the state's perennial swing district, currently represented by Republican Will Hurd. But he's not coming back, so District 23 is up for grabs. Democrat Gina Ortiz-Jones and Republican Tony Gonzalez are duking it out for the chance to succeed Hurd. Gonzalez is a Navy veteran, while Ortiz-Jones is a former intelligence officer and captain in the Air Force. Ortiz-Jones ran against Hurd in 2018 and lost to him by less than 1%. The district stretches from parts of San Antonio to out west in El Paso, claiming the Texas-Mexico border in between. Our Sarah Duran takes a look at what voters in the district want the candidates to address.
Healthcare will be a priority when Monica Verdoza heads to the polls this November. As a voter living in Congressional District 23, she wants to know the plans candidates have. Shadow boxes cover this wall inside Monica Verdoza's home. Each one is filled with memories from her time in the U.S. Air Force.
Really feel blessed that I had the opportunity to serve my country.
She spent 21 years serving and completing various deployments, triumphs, and tragedies she tells her daughter, Michelle Cerda, about.
You know, there were some really tough times.
Her biggest challenge came after her second mission in Iraq. The soldier was diagnosed with numerous autoimmune issues. In 2017, Verdoza medically retired from the military. Now living with disabilities, she spends her time at home caring for dogs.
We foster military working dogs, and Michelle's a big help with that.
But first, her day starts here in the medicine cabinet.
I have chronic allergies and respiratory issues.
Verdoza takes a dozen pills daily. The price for good health often comes out of her own pocket. It's a concern,
especially given the concerns about rising prescription care prices.
Verdoza lives in Texas's 23rd Congressional District, to see either candidates, Tony Gonzalez or Gina Ortiz-Jones, hope to snag. Verdoza feels their focus should include lowering health care and prescription costs for veterans. Yet her greatest fear is for Michelle, who has lupus. She will be aging out of her mother's health care plan this December.
Definitely would want to make sure that I am taken care of.
Verdoza wants to know the plans candidates have for military dependents in Michelle's situation.
I support a public option. We need to make sure that working families have a fighting chance.
Yeah, the Affordable Care Act is broken. Now, part of the next evolution of the Affordable Care Act needs to include coverage for pre-existing conditions.
Verdoza wants a working solution and quick to give her daughter a fighting chance.
And still to come on Capitol tonight, a COVID vaccine could be approved by next month. Why health officials say it still may not be available to all Texans until next summer. Plus, the Democratic Super PAC is doubling its investment in Texas, what it could signal for competitive state house races. Welcome back to Capitol Tonight. Here's a look at some of the other big stories making political headlines today. Experts say a COVID vaccine could be ready by next month, but Texas health officials say it likely won't be widely available across the state until at least the summer of 2021.
Just on the face of it, the vaccine allocation will be a complex and demanding task.
State health officials gave an update yesterday. They say once a vaccine is ready to go, frontline workers and high-risk populations will get it first. But due to demand and availability, they anticipate the general population won't be able to get access to it until July, and that's if a vaccine is ready by the end of the year. Texas is joining the Trump administration's lawsuit against Google. It accuses the tech company of stifling competition in online searches and advertising. A Google executive called the lawsuit deeply flawed. Texas Attorney General has fought the tech giant before. Last year, he launched an investigation into Google's market dominance. And a National Democratic Super PAC is doubling its investment in the battle to flip the Texas House. Forward Majority's total contribution is now $12 million. The announcement comes a day after Governor Abbott announced his campaign will be pouring in millions to help Republican state House candidates. With us now to weigh in on these latest developments are our political analyst, Democrat Harold Cook, and Republican Ted DeLisi. Harold, Democrats 9 seats away from flipping the House. What do you think are the chances at this point in time?
I think they get better and better. 6 months ago, I wouldn't have told you that the Democrats had much of a chance to do it. For that to happen, everything would have to be going in Democrats' direction, and it has ever since. Now, they don't just have to win 9 seats. They also have to defend the seats they won last time, which is some pretty iffy real estate for Democrats to win and hold. So I'm glad the money is coming in because they're going to need it.
Ted, as mentioned, Governor Abbott spending millions to help out. I mean, how concerned are Republicans at this point, and how will Abbott's investment really help out?
Well, I think Governor Abbott's involvement is very important. I mean, obviously, I think from a standpoint of we're in the middle of early voting, so kind of every day counts. And I think that the epicenter, if you will, of these state legislative races is Tarrant County, where there are several competitive races that are happening within Tarrant County. And we've seen that Democrats have made gains in Harris and Dallas recently. So I think that it's a significant announcement that Super PAC is going to spend an additional over $5 million in this race. So it's like the big guns are coming out on all sides. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see even more announcements about Super PAC involvement because there's a lot at stake this November for the Texas House.
2 weeks left. Interesting. Harold, healthcare has been the subject of many Democratic attack ads in this House fight, but Abbott's campaign just released this digital spot. Here's part of it.
As a physician lawmaker, I can tell you there's been a lot of false and misleading information on healthcare. So let me give you the facts. In 2019, Texas Republicans passed legislation to protect patients with pre-existing conditions from losing access to health insurance.
The ad goes on there, but what's your response to this digital ad that Abbott's campaign has put out?
Well, the Republicans could defend it all they want in Texas especially, but the fact still remains that we have the highest uninsured rate in the nation, and the Republicans have been in charge and have done nothing about that, and that's the fundamental problem right there. You can talk about what's covered under these plans all you want, but if you're not under any plan, what good does that do?
Ted, Representative Oliverson there, who we heard from, is referencing a state Senate bill which would temporarily bring back Texas's high-risk insurance pool covering people with pre-existing conditions. Experts have said it would provide far less protection than current Obamacare provisions. So what's your response to this campaign ad, but also kind of what is being said in the ad itself?
Well, I think this ad is a reaction to the digital ad that was done by the Democrats attacking Republicans on being against pre-existing conditions. Look, I mean, I think that this is kind of a different type of a landscape than we've seen in previous election cycles where, you wouldn't necessarily have seen Republicans get out there. Dr. Oliverson is a Republican from the Houston area. He's out there basically talking about the idea that Republicans have a plan to protect those with pre-existing conditions. This is a different type of rhetoric from Republicans than in previous cycles where they were just mostly concerned about repealing Obamacare. So I think this goes to show that the kind of an evolution of the issue on healthcare and that this portends to kind of a different type of discussion potentially next session, Karina.
Guys, we will have to leave it there. Races we are all watching, and I know you'll be here all night on election night to dive into all of these races. Thank you so much. And still ahead on Capitol tonight, migrants at the southern border often lack access to health care, and it's something that's become an even bigger problem in a pandemic. A group of volunteers is crossing the border to help asylum seekers stuck in Mexico. Right now, there's a U.S. State Department do not travel warning for parts of Mexico that border Laredo and Brownsville. Organized crime is a big problem in the area, but people are also dealing with the dangers of the coronavirus. Our John Salazar shows us how volunteers are taking a risk to help migrants stay protected.
Between outbreaks of violence and just not knowing the terrain, medical workers gamble with their safety every day to provide health care for migrants. Throw COVID-19 into that equation, that makes their job that much more dangerous.
It took time for Sam Bishop to be comfortable traveling in and out of Mexico.
We were definitely, like, if anything, I think over cautious about the dangers down here. Like, we were very much like, you know, head in a swivel.
He's an Army veteran with special operations training. Those skills are why he volunteers to cross every day into what can be the dangerous Mexican city of Matamoros.
So there's another little Marine checkpoint up here. We just kind of wave at them and they open up.
His current assignment is project coordinator for GRM, or the Global Response Management Clinic.
You know, there was no medical care before we got here. Coronavirus is not the worst thing that's happening in these people's lives right now, you know?
Leonette is going to do the pharmacy stuff.
GRM set up shop at this fenced-in migrant camp. That was last year. They're a non-government associated nonprofit aimed at providing medical aid to immigrants on the southern side of the international border.
Patients will present themselves to the clinic to get seen.
People seeking asylum are stuck at migrant camps, primarily because of President Trump's Remain in Mexico immigration policy and, of course, the current pandemic. Bishop oversees a staff of medics, nurses, and doctors, all with different backgrounds. COVID-19 testing is done on site. This woman tested positive for COVID-19 antibodies. 2 other women also tested positive. So far, around 100 people have tested positive for coronavirus antibodies. But luckily, GRM says, no outbreaks. Then there's specialists helping out, like obstetrician and gynecologist Ernesto Miguel. He's a doctor from Cuba who now lives in Mexico. 3 times a week, he volunteers time to see female migrant patients, many of whom are pregnant. At its peak, 3,000 refugees lived inside this compound known as Tent City. These days, they are less than 1,000 still here.
How busy was your day?
It was about typical. We saw about 8 patients in the camp and then another 19 here at the RCM outside. And again,
For the program director, the mission doesn't change.
Even if the media attention shifts on to other areas, this is still an ongoing issue.
Adding, as long as migrants need help, they will stay.
And that is all the time that we have tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow night at 7.